We usually think we know who the major players in history are, right? We assume the stories have all been told. But today, we're diving into a real-life historical mystery. We're on the trail of a leader who was so important, so consequential, that he was systematically erased from the very history he helped create.
And this entire investigation really hinges on one incredible question. What if a name that's been passed down for almost 2,000 years, isn't what it seems? What if it's basically a historical typo, a linguistic cover-up that's been hiding a monumental truth this whole time?
Now, to get why this is such a big deal, we need to talk about the Amida. You have to imagine the scene. The temple in Jerusalem is destroyed in 70 CE. This is a massive crisis. The Amida prior basically becomes the new heart of Judaism, the successor to the temple itself. It is the absolute bedrock of Jewish worship. So the person who gets chosen to arrange this prayer, they're essentially drawing the blueprint for the future of the entire faith.
So who got this unbelievably important job? Well, the Talmud gives us a name, Shimon Hapakuli. But that's about all it gives us. Later on, people trying to figure out what his name meant just sort of guessed it was his job. That Pakuli meant he was a simple cotton dealer. But hang on a second. Does that really add up? You're going to entrust the entire spiritual future of your people to a cotton dealer? Something feels off here.
Yeah, that official story just doesn't quite sit right. To find the real person behind the name, we have to start digging around in the margins of other old texts, and that's where a totally different character starts to appear.
And here it is, our first big clue, and it comes from a pretty surprising source. We're in the early 1800s, and a rabbi, Boruch Frankel Tomom, is writing notes on Jewish law. In them, he mentions a man named Shimon HaKalfus. Now get this guy wasn't some random tradesman. Oh no, this Shimon was a hero, a man who helped save the Jewish people. His death was so important that it was marked by a fast day.
Okay, so let's put these two names right next to each other. On one side, we have the official arranger, Shimon Hapakuli. On the other, the forgotten hero, Shimon HaKalfus. Now at first, they look pretty different. But if you start to look at the Hebrew consonants, the actual letters that make up the core of each name, something pretty amazing starts to happen.
So how do you get from HaKalfus to Hapakuli? Well, the key isn't in what the words mean. It's actually hidden in a really cool quirk of language, and how sounds can literally shift and swap places over hundreds of years of just being spoken. It's a documented linguistic process, and it's called consonantal metathesis. Sounds fancy, but the idea is actually super simple. It's just when the consonants in a word get jumbled up over time. You can think of it like a game of telephone that goes on for centuries. A name that's said one way in the first century can end up sounding a little scrambled a few hundred years later. And here's the solution to the puzzle. It's just a simple scramble. The main consonants in Hakafulus are K, L, P. The main consonants in Hapakuli are P, K, L. It's the exact same set of letters. The hero, Hakafulus, was disguised as the cotton dealer, Hapakuli. And look, this isn't just some wild theory. A scholar named Nehemiah Bruhl first suggested this way back in 1883. But it got a huge academic stamp of approval a century later when the famous professor Yehuda Leibs at Hebrew University confirmed it.
But okay, if Halkuflis is the real name, what does it mean? Well, those Hebrew consonants, KLPS, are a direct phonetic match for a Greek name you might have heard of, Klopas. All of a sudden, our phantom cotton dealer isn't a phantom anymore. He has a real, historical Greek identity.
And that name, Klopas, is not random at all. It belongs to a very specific and very important person from that exact time and place. And that leads us directly to our prime suspect.
This was Simeon, son of Clopas, who also happened to be the cousin of Jesus. And he wasn't some background character. He was a big deal. He was the dynastic successor who took over as the second leader of the Nazarene community in Jerusalem. That's the earliest group of Aramaic-speaking followers of Jesus who still considered themselves very much a part of the Jewish people. He led that community for decades before he was martyred himself.
Again, I want to be clear. This isn't some new fringe theory. It's a solid, scholarly argument that's been built and strengthened for over 100 years. It started with Nehemiah Bruhl in 1883. Then, in 1984, the heavyweight scholar Professor Yehuda Leibs confirmed it, and more recently, in 2011, another scholar, John Gauger, traced the name's journey even further. This is like a historical cold case being solved, piece by piece, across generations.
So, how can we be so sure? Well, there's no single piece of evidence that's a perfect smoking gun. Instead, the whole case is built on a really powerful idea. The convergence is the argument. It's when you have multiple, totally separate lines of evidence, all from different sources, that all point to the exact same conclusion. The case here is built on layers and layers of proof. First, you have Jewish traditions that literally credit a Shimon Klopas with writing sacred texts. Second, and this is so important, rabbinic memory itself knew there were two major figures named Shimon, and they were very careful to distinguish Klopas from Kepha, who we know as Peter. Third, we've got old prayer books that attribute prayers to him. Fourth, the archaeology backs it up. Discoveries like the Sukhanik tomb prove his family was a big deal in Jerusalem. And finally, early Christian writers like Papias put the Klopas family right at the heart of the story. No matter which way you look at it, all roads lead to Simeon, son of Klopas.
Which of course brings us to the biggest question of all. If the evidence is really too strong, why was he hidden? Why would you turn this major dynastic leader into a phantom cotton dealer?
Because the truth is absolutely stunning. The man who stood before the great sages and put together the foundational prayer of Rabbinic Judaism was the cousin of Jesus and the leader of the Nazarene community.
You see, as the years went by, the lines between Judaism and the new, growing Christian movement got sharper and harder. Simeon's identity became, well, a liability for both sides. Having the leader of the Nazarenes shaping core Jewish prayer just didn't fit the neat stories both institutions wanted to tell. So over time, his real identity was overwritten. His name was scrambled by word of mouth until he became a safe, anonymous phantom.
This whole story shows us something really profound about the past. History isn't just a simple record of what happened. It's a record of what people chose to remember, what they forgot, and sometimes what they deliberately hid. And it really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other huge truths are still out there, just waiting to be discovered, hidden in something as simple as a name?